Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all. So welcome to Brock and Bell's Live. Today we're going to go over how to transform your home office into an ergonomic haven. The biggest thing that I have, so I'm a chiropractor, and I see a lot of my patients who have been working from home for the last month and coming into this next month of quarantine, kind of worried about how they're going to handle the negative repercussions of sitting at home. Sitting at home or working in positions that might create stress and tension in your body. Mostly what I see is people that have low back pain, shoulder stiffness, neck pain. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to turn my music down just a little bit. Actually, that's one of the benefits of working from home. You can put on some music and listen to it the whole time to help you maintain some chill. So the biggest thing about working from home is to make sure that people always ask me, like, what type of chair is the best type of chair? And honestly, it doesn't matter. I have in my office, we have chairs that are $5,000 because people are always giving us chairs so we can test them and then sell them to our patients. But you can have a chair that costs $10, and you can do a few things that make it beneficial. Hi, is that your father? Yeah, hey, Dad. You can do a few things to tweak your chair and your posture that create less tension throughout your body so that you can work for longer periods of time. And the biggest thing about working for longer periods of time is that it will not start to put chronic stress as you are in this position. So what I oftentimes see when we have people working from home with a laptop, the biggest thing is that even if you start to get into work and you're very conscious of your seated position, you're sitting upright and in a very ergonomically friendly way. Even in doing this, with my hands on the keyboard and looking down at the screen, it will start to create stress and tension. If I move back a little bit more, you can see how as I'm typing and looking down, my shoulders round forward, my head is looking down, so it's going to create stress. And if I'm doing this for 8 hours throughout the day, it's definitely going to cause tension. I'm going to have neck pain, I might have low back pain, I'm going to have aches and stiffnesses. And the thing is people that I oftentimes see with these types of complaints, they will say that there's no real consistency with presenting complaints. They will say, well, it's on and off and it comes out of the blue. If you have pains, aches, and stiffnesses that are on and off and come out of the blue, all that means is that your body is very good at ignoring these aches and pains. If I have something that is very important for me to do with work, and I'm working away and typing, I will consciously ignore those aches and pains as I'm getting involved with my work. So what we have to do is make a conscious effort to get in the position that will allow us to not create these aches or create this tension within the body. So some very simple things that you can do is, first and foremost, if you have a laptop, the easiest thing you can do is go to Best Denki or Challenger. I think Jaslyn looked at, where'd you look, Jaslyn? Amazon? She looked at Amazon, and you can get a wireless keyboard. And you can order this, and they'll send it to you even in this lockdown period. But a wireless keyboard is tremendously beneficial because what that allows us to do is it takes you're not connected to your screen, and that's the biggest thing. When your keyboard is so close to your screen, it's almost like you're gravitating into this position. So what the wireless keyboard allows us to do is push the monitor, the screen away from us, and bring the keyboard nearer to us. The closer the keyboard is to your body, the closer you are able to keep your elbows to your body, and the more upright you are able to be. But now, as you can see, as I move the keyboard closer to me, I'm still looking down at the monitor or the screen of the laptop. So with this, what also the wireless keyboard allows you to do is that you can then raise your screen. So ideally you want the top third of your screen to be level with your eyeballs. So what I've done is I've gone over to my bookshelf, I've pulled out some books, some, let's see, Philip Roth, Everyman, Graham Greene, The End of the Affair, some titles you might want to check out, but today we're not reading these books. They're purely acting as a platform to set up my screen. So as you can see, it's pretty high and it's not so stable, but these books are purely serving as a purpose to raise the monitor. So or raise the screen. So I now have the screen at a height and a wireless keyboard to bring these close enough to me to where I can type with my elbows close to my body. I'm not extending forward, reaching forward, rounding that back. I'm keeping my neutral spinal position. I'm raising the monitor so that my head is not looking down. It's actually able to look in a straight manner. And you also, well, with this wireless keyboard, there's a benefit of it having a mouse pad built in. You can also get a wireless mouse if that's easier to control. But the main purpose of this whole setup is that we're not bound to the keyboard that's directly connected with your laptop. You have separation to where you can lift the screen, you can bring the keyboard next to you so that we're able to sit in an upright position with our hand looking forward. So super simple. This costs less than $50 from Challenger. I bought it yesterday. And if you're a member, you get some discount or deal. But it's literally the easiest thing to take your home office into a more ergonomically correct working situation. So the other thing you'll see is that when I'm in this position and my screen is at the appropriate height, I go to bring the keyboard near to me, you will see that my elbow is lower than my wrist. So this is called a negative angle, right? My wrist is higher than my elbow, so it's raised up like this. Ideally, what I would like to do is have it up so my wrists are going down to the keyboard. So then what that means is that I have to raise myself higher so that I get the angle from my elbow to my wrist to be sloping downwards. So you can do a few things. I've grabbed a few throw pillows from my couch and just put them under your chair. Sit them down. And as I do that, I just literally took 2 pillows. And when I go in to type on my keyboard, you can now see that it's pretty much level at this point. So ideally, we want to have your elbows higher than your wrist, but if you can get it at least level, what it does is it prevents you from reaching up like this. Anything we can do to prevent this posture. So, and when you also put your thumb on top of pillows, it's called a perturbed surface, so it's kind of wobbly a little bit. It's kind of like sitting on a balance ball. But when you do this, you're requiring more of your core to engage in this upright position. Now, I took pillows off of my couch, but there are some fancy products that I will kind of show you. This is Backjoy. You might see these. They're like at Plaza Singapura. There's a Backjoy like little kiosk that you can go and pick some of these up. This is another Backjoy. It kind of depends on the size, how big you are, and also what you're trying to achieve. Backjoy is good because what it does is it forces you into that upright position because it leans you forward. So when I put this under my bum, it's rounded, and as I sit it forces me to rock forward. Now in this position, you'll see that my elbows are not higher than my wrists. However, with the back joy, it forces me kind of in this upright position. So it's kind of it's a good alternative if you don't have enough pillows to get, to raise you up. So back joy or the equivalent is excellent. This is another one we sell in our clinic, and it does the same exact thing. So it sits on the chair, and what this does is you can kind of see how your bum fits right into this, and then it supports your low back in an upright position. So anything we can do to get you into that neutral spinal position, you sit all the way so your sit bones are you slide back into the chair, and then it keeps you in that upright position. So those are the two things that we have in the clinic. You can get them, I mean, I'm not saying to come into my clinic and buy these things. You can go find them online. You can get them anywhere. I don't push products. It's literally something that can just help you for a more ergonomically designed workstation. The other thing is oftentimes I have people ask me about lumbar support. So this is super cheap. This is from Daiso. So it's literally $2. You can get this from Daiso for $2. And what it does, it slides on the back of your chair. And if you are, I don't know if you can kind of see this here. I'm going to tilt you a little bit back. See it on the back of the chair here. The way to use this appropriately is to slide your bum all the way back on the chair and then lean into this back support so it's putting you in the upright position. So this is something people will say, well, should I have lumbar support, or my chair doesn't have lumbar support? It doesn't really matter. The main thing is that your body is supporting you in the upright position. These types of support tools, they are known as a prophylactic. It's a fancy way of saying it's a reminder. They act as a reminder for your body to be in that upright position. And the more you sit in that upright position and the more you engage your core, the more you will develop the strength to allow you to sit for longer periods of time. But something that's very important about ergonomic positions or posture, do you guys hear that bird? Can you hear it? It's a little hummingbird. Anyway,
You can.
so the most important thing about your ergonomic workstation is that this is kind of a complex idea, but the best posture is your next posture. So I want you to think about this and actually what it means. Your best posture is the next posture. And if we break that down, all it means is that you got to keep moving. So ideally, what you have the capabilities to do is work from a seated position and move to a standing position. When you're in a standing position, it's a little bit more difficult because you have, in the home, you don't have like a table that can adjust, or maybe you do, you might be lucky. But something that you can do, something that I've actually done, is to take my laptop, and I'm just going to show you actually. So if we go into the kitchen, this is literally something I have done. And you open a shelf, sorry, getting up close and personal. So if I open a shelf, this is a shelf where there's bowls. I'm gonna remove those out of the shelf and then literally put my laptop inside. So all I've done is open my cabinet. I put my laptop right there, and then I stand at the countertop and put my keyboard here with my monitor there, or my screen, and it's a standing workstation. So you don't need something fancy to where you have this desk that rises up and down. This is literally something to where it's directly at my height. If you're not quite as tall, you can makeshift or raise it up in some, just stack up books or something like that. Make sense? So we've turned our cabinet where we keep our dishes into a standing workstation super easily. Oh my God. super heavy. All right, so, and I want you to think about that. The most important component is your best posture is your next posture. And the key component of that is movement. So what that means is that once we have set up our ergonomic workstation, if it's at the table, or if you have a standing workstation, if somebody stands for 8 hours throughout the day, they're going to be sore. If somebody sits 8 hours throughout the day, you're definitely going to be uncomfortable. So what I want to teach you is several things that you can do to break up the routine of the seated position, which will then inherently increase your productivity, because what happens is that if you're in this position, even if I have a perfectly ergonomic workstation, with my pillows, my keyboard, the screen's at a height where I'm not looking down. If I'm sitting in this position for up to an hour, I will definitely get areas of aches and pains. And the reason this is because as you sit, there are muscles that are shortening from this position, and then other muscles that are lengthening. So what happens is that as you sit, as you can see, but when I sit down, this joint is bent here. So the muscles on the front side of my hip are going to shorten because that's flexed. And the muscles on the back side, my glutes, they're going to be lengthened, and therefore they're weakened. The muscles on the front side of my thoracic cage or my chest are shortened because I'm reaching out to the keyboard. Even if I'm perfectly in a balanced position, as my arms reach the keyboard, my pectorals or my chest muscles are shortening and kind of rounding. What that leads to is a weakening of the muscles in between my shoulder blades. So no matter what you do, if it's a standing workstation or a seated workstation, every 45 minutes to an hour, this is what I tell my patients, you have to do some type of movement to break up that routine. The simplest movement that you can do is a flexion and extension exercise. And if you do yoga, it's equivalent to a cat-cow or a cat-camel. All that is, and you can do an adapted position of that. So I do it in this. So extension, this is going to be the cow. And then flexion, this is going to be the cat. So in yoga, you're doing this in a tabletop position on all fours, but we can do an adapted cat-cow in the seated position to break up that routine of sitting for many hours. So something that I do, if I'm getting into a long time of administration work, or if I'm been at the computer, whatever it is, I'm doing something at the computer, I always break up that routine through a cat-cow exercise, and I want to walk you through that right now. So I want everybody to sit in a nice neutral position. Get both of your feet flat on the ground, and you can have your hands on the tabletop or on your keyboard, because that's a workstation. And with this, what we're going to do is start at the base of the spine, and you're going to stick your belly out. So you're kind of arching the back, sticking your belly towards the screen or towards the computer, and then you're bringing those shoulders back and trying to touch those shoulder blades together. Think of pinching a chopstick in between your shoulder blades. You're extending, sticking your belly out, bringing those shoulders back, tucking that chin back, and then looking up to the ceiling. So that's the cow, where you're in extension, right? Hold it for one deep breath. And then on the exhale, you're gonna round the spine. So bring those shoulders forward, really crunch through the abdominals, through the pectorals, bring that chin to the chest, and kind of make that C-shaped curvature where you're really rounding throughout. And hold that for one breath. So that's one repetition. So what I recommend my patients to do is to do 10 repetitions every 45 minutes to an hour. So it's super simple. You just take a deep breath in, and you're extending, bring that belly out, shoulders back, looking up to the ceiling, and then exhaling and rounding that spine. Take a deep breath in and extend, looking up to the ceiling. And then exhale and rounding that spine. So we just did 2 repetitions there. Every 45 minutes to an hour, you want to do 10 repetitions. This is a tremendous way to get movement into the spine to reduce the musculature tension that you might have in the upper shoulders or the lower neck. Super important part about this is that the most common thing that I see from people that spend time at a desk is they have extremely tight musculature here. Has anybody ever felt that? Raise your hand. Jocelyn, you've never had that. There we go. Everybody raise their hand. So the reason that this muscle becomes tight is because when you're working at the computer and you're reaching forward, right, reaching towards the keyboard, the pectoral muscles shorten. The pectoral is the muscle in your chest that allows you to bring your arm forward. So if you're working at a computer, this muscle starts to shorten, and as this muscle starts to shorten, the reciprocal muscle, or the muscle that does the opposite action in the shoulder blade, starts to weaken, and it brings the shoulder blades forward. So a lot of times we see forward rolled shoulders, and the head comes forward. Now, when the shoulder blades round forward, oh, I have 10% battery left. I'll be able to fix that in just a sec. When those shoulders roll forward, what happens is that the superior trapezius, or the muscles on the upper part of your shoulder, those take over as a stabilizing muscle of the shoulder blade. So as your shoulders round forward, the superior trapezius, or this muscle right in your shoulder, that starts to contract, and that's why people start to feel your shoulders rise up, and you start to feel this tension and discomfort, and then after maybe 6, 7, 8 hours, you're like, oh, pain. And that then can start to lead to neck pain, and in many cases, it develops into headaches as well. So what happens is when you start to imagine that you have a chopstick in between your shoulder blades, you're bringing those shoulders back and down, you're literally taking the load off of the musculature in the upper part of your shoulder, and you will feel that muscle soften, or it should get softer. So what I really want you to concentrate on, if you're working at a computer, is at least every 45 minutes, bring those shoulders back and down, tuck that head and look up to the ceiling, and hold it for about 10 to 15 seconds. When you do that, it reduces the load on the superior trapezius and will reduce a ton of tension. I mean, the biggest thing that people come into my clinic for is neck pain, shoulder tension, and low back pain. And what I tell people is that I want you to be able to create healthy habits in your own life so that you don't have to come to see me as often. I mean, that's the most important thing. How do we get sustainable, corrective change within our patients so that they don't have to continually come back to us? So, one last time, I want to go through that exercise with you. We're in that seated position, a nice neutral spine, meaning we're upright. And we're going to do the cow first, which is extending the belly out, kind of arching your back, bringing those shoulders back and down, tucking the chin and looking up. That's the cow. And then exhale and round into that C-shaped spine, chin to chest, shoulders rounded forward, and really rounding through the spine. One more time, we take a deep inhale and extend, bring those shoulders back and down, extending the belly out, tuck the chin, look up to the ceiling. And exhale, rounding that spine all the way through. Great. So that exercise, literally 10 repetitions every 45 minutes to an hour, will have a tremendous impact on your muscular soreness, lumbar, the low back. If you have a slip disc or a bulging disc, this motion of flexion extension, it starts to create a pumping motion at the disc, and can help to stop the negative degenerative change, and in some cases reverse the negative effects. it's case by case. I don't guarantee you that if you have a slipped disc, that doing this will help, will fix it, but it will definitely prevent it from getting worse. So do that. The next thing is that, like I said, the best posture is your next posture. So what we've covered is setting up your seated workplace position for the most ergonomically friendly design given your regular household items. The other thing we did is we went into the kitchen, we set the screen or the monitor up at eye level, and we took our wireless keyboard and set it down on the counter, so then you have transformed your kitchen into a standing workstation. The other thing that we went over is going through an exercise that breaks up that seated routine. So the next thing I want to cover is something that is a little bit more involved, but equally as important. When you do sit for long periods of time, particularly your legs are negatively affected because, like I said, in the seated position, you have flexion at the hip, which this is flexion. So these muscles are shortened on the front side, the muscles on the back side are lengthened. So what we want to do is get some movement into those areas of the spine or into those joints and the musculature so that it supports healthy movement. And also what that does, as soon as you move, as soon as you stand up, it fires neurons that are directly linked to your central nervous system or your brain. So it acts as a physiological wake up. It'll recharge you of sorts. And I'm sure many of you have had the experience where you're just like slogging through data entry or something, and you're just, it feels like every single key that you press is the last key that you can press before you're gonna die. So if you ever feel like that, we need to do something to break the circuit. As Singapore is doing for the COVID-19, the little circuit breaker, you can do the same thing from your seated position. And what we want to do is very simple. It's simply standing up. But I want you to be intentional with your standing up, because what we can do is fire muscle groups that are caused to turn off as a result of the seated position. So like I said, when you sit, the muscles on the front side of your leg are shortened because it's hip flexion. The muscles on the back side of your leg are lengthened because it's bending forward. So if I'm in this position, the glutes are lengthened, and when a muscle is lengthened, it's weakened. So what I want to do is a super simple exercise from the seated position. I'm going to back up so I can get fully in the frame. All right. So super complex. I want both of my feet flat on the ground. Flat on the ground. I want to be in a neutral spinal position. And all I'm going to do is lean forward so I feel that weight on my heels. I'm lifting my toes off the ground, weight on my heels, leaning forward enough until I can stand up. So that is a bodyweight squat. So a bodyweight squat is a fantastic way to fire up those glutes, to stretch those hip flexors, and to get some firing of the muscles into the core. So again, some key points when we're doing a bodyweight squat is make sure that your feet are slightly wider than shoulder width apart. You're putting weight into your heels. You're leaning forward with a neutral spine, so hinging at that hip until the weight comes over your heels, and then you stand up. When you get to that upright position, that standing position, I want you to squeeze the glutes and drive that pelvis forward, and then open up that chest. And then you can sit back down. We're going to do it again. I want you to stand up, leaning forward, weight on your heels, stand, squeeze those glutes, drive that pelvis forward, and open up that chest. And then sit down. Super simple exercise, a bodyweight squat. It fires up the musculature, the glutes, stretches the hip flexors. It gets extension through the thoracic spine as you stand up, and it will start to fire neurons that go into the brain and wake you up and act as a neurological reset. So it's a fantastic thing to do. I would do that. Ideally, you can do that every hour. Just do 10 repetitions, bodyweight squats, 10 repetitions. And if you don't do it every hour, I would do it once mid-morning and once in the afternoon. So after you hit that post-breakfast lull, say around 10, 10:30, maybe 11, you can do some bodyweight squats, or if it's that post-lunch lull where you're around 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, you're sitting at your desk and just starting to feel very lethargic and tired, just do 10 bodyweight squats with those key pointers in mind. Heels or feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart, heels planted firmly on the ground, leaning forward until the weight is on those heels and the outside of the foot, and then standing straight up, firing through the glutes and extending through the thoracic spine. Sound okay? Great. So again, to reiterate what we've gone over, the most important factor about ergonomics is that the best posture is your next posture. What I always recommend to my patients is getting movement into their routine. If you're sitting 8 hours a day at a computer, you will be sore, no matter what. If you have the healthiest spine, if you're going to the gym every day, eventually you will be sore. You may not be sore right now, and I hope that you have an ability or capacity to prevent you from getting sore. But if all you do is sit and do the same data entry or whatever it is, you're going to have muscular tension patterns that come to the surface, and then you're going to need outside help. So my purpose in doing some of these videos is to just make sure that you are doing as much as you can to prevent the negative impact of the seated position. So I want to take a minute here, as I've gone over a little bit of content, to just open it up for questions. Does anybody have a question about what I've recently gone over, or in regards to your home office, work office situation?
So
No
I think
questions.
the main
No, I'm all right.
people have are the shoulders and the lower back. Anything in particular for the lower back as well, or would these tools be super helpful for the lower back?
Good question. So,
And one more, Releasing Tension in the Neck by Wesley.
yeah, so there are a few things you can do. This is everything that I've gone over is in preparation or for your workstation. So the important thing to do after you've done a big long session working is to set up some spinal traction. So that sounds really fancy, but it's really just stretching throughout the spine. So a few things that you can do: if you take those same pillows that you sat on your chair, you can stack them up. I would recommend stacking them on the floor with the yoga mat, putting them on top of the yoga mat. And you can take probably 3 or 4 and really stack them up. And what I want you to do is put the apex of that stack, the highest point of that stack is going to be right at the midpoint of your mid-back, and you lay down on that. So you're extending over that pile of pillows. And what that does is it helps to positively influence tendons, ligaments, and musculature that have negatively adapted to this position. So if you do have muscular aches and pains and stiffnesses, and you're not sure if a chiropractor or if a physio or an osteopath is right for you, you can do a little troubleshooting on your own. And if you do this, where you take a few pillows and stack them up on top of each other, and then lean back and extend over that, if the pain goes away, you do know that you have a mechanical or a structural shift within the spine. So it's a mechanical problem that can usually be appropriately addressed. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing is within the neck. One second, I have a little prop here. A little noodle. Within the neck, as you can see, even when I'm in this ergonomically appropriate position, looking straight ahead, my head starts to get some downward gaze. And when my head has downward gaze, it has an appearance of shifting forward, and then I'm going to exaggerate it, but we're getting some of this. So what you can do, in the same way that you're laying on the pillows, we get cervical traction. This is a swimming pool noodle. You can get one of these for like $12 at Toys R Us, and just cut it in a distance that is about this height. I would say about a foot, or yeah, if you don't know what a foot is, go on and look it up on the internet. So with this, what this can do is it acts as a traction roll for your cervical spine or your neck. So you lay on a hard surface and you place this just below your collar line at the top part of your shoulder blades, and you lay on this so it stretches the tendons and ligaments throughout your spine, or your cervical spine. This is something that you can literally do every single day. All of the traction, if it's the pillows on top of your bed or the floor, you can do that every single day. If it's the traction with the pool toy, you can do it every single day. And something that I talk to my patients is that many people say, well, it seems like a long time to come to get adjusted or whatever the case is. But the reality is, if the bones have degenerated to a point to where seeing negative impact of the stress and tension on those bones, that does mean that those misalignments have been around for many years, and it's going to take a little bit of work to unravel those misalignments, to increase the mobility at the area, decrease muscular tensions. So with that, you can be proactive in your own spinal health. There's no person that can do more for you than you can do for yourself. Does that make sense? Good. Getting a few nods, but it's super important. I can sit here and talk about the appropriate ergonomics, but it doesn't mean anything unless you do it. If you are proactive with setting up your home ergonomic workstation, and then you're diligent about keeping to it, regardless of where you are. If it's a standing workstation, if you get a phone call and you stand up, these are super important factors that will positively influence the health of your spine, and more importantly, to help with your productivity. Because I'm sure you have noticed that if you are in pain, let's say I have pain in my shoulder and I'm starting to ache, and it's disrupting me from doing whatever I am doing. Let's say I'm at the computer, or I'm playing with my kids, and my shoulder is sore. So that pain has become severe enough to interrupt my ability to think, my cognitive capabilities. So with chronic pain, it changes the way that your brain works. It changes the things that you focus on, and ultimately, it can be a major contributing factor to aches and pains, purely just by thinking about it. So I want you, no matter what you're doing in your work or home office or work office, the simplest thing you can do is that cat-cow. It's an adapted cat-cow. And remember, cow is sticking out your shoulders, sticking out your belly, bringing those shoulders back and extending your head up. The other, yeah, cat-cow. And then the cat is rounding through the spine and contracting through to make sure that we're getting full articulation at the disc. Great. A funny thing, not a funny thing, but an interesting thing about the disc. I have many people who come up to me and they say, oh, I can't go to chiropractor. I know what my problem is. I have a disc problem. The disc is never the problem. The disc will only break down if there is abnormal motion at the disc. So what that means is, like, if somebody has an injury and the bone is slightly misaligned, maybe 95, 96, car accident, something long time ago, and there's a slight misalignment, and then they start having children, and they start to pick up that baby, they're holding the baby, they're carrying a bunch of stuff, and this slight misalignment starts to create more tension within the spine. The disc is made up of cartilage material, much like your ear, and as it's compressed, it begins to break down. So that slip and fall that happened many years ago, on top of the chronic repetitive stress of working with kids, has created this situation where this person is in chronic tension. They have pain, tingling, and numbness down the right leg, and many other extenuating circumstances. However, we look at it the same way. We want to make sure that we're getting the spine checked and making sure the nervous system is clear so that can help to prevent any type of foreign invaders, but also prevent or to decrease the aches and pains and tension, to interrupt that pain sensory pathway. So we went over a lot of content there. We went over how to transform your laptop into an appropriate ergonomic workstation using the wireless keyboard. This is a huge investment. I definitely recommend, if you're working from home, get a wireless keyboard, because it allows you to, you can literally sit back on the couch and type as your computer is up to 10 meters away. So we went in depth in that. We talked about what you can do to transition to a standing workstation. That's seated flexion extension exercise, followed by the standing body weight squat with the extension, and then getting into some of the products that you can utilize, and most notably, something as simply as pillows. So I do encourage you, if you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, reach out to me. You can send me a DM on Instagram or through Brock and Bells. Jaslyn will give me the message. But the most important factor, again, is to make sure that through this time of working from home, you're doing some type of motion. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bunch of push-ups. It can be skipping rope. It can be going for a long walk. But we want to make sure that you are moving your body so that we're not stepping backwards where you are with your chiropractic care. So with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to wrap it up. Do you have any questions?
I think you've covered the questions from Clarissa and Wesley. I've been reading it out to you via chat.
Great. That's fantastic. There are some things that are more involved, but Clarissa and Wesley, if you try these things and you have questions, just feel free to reach out, and we can do even a video consultation so I can see what you're doing to help you in assessing that, or feel free to send them an email or a direct message, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Most welcome. Enjoy the first day of the rest of your quarantine in the next month, and we'll be checking in most likely next Tuesday, and stay tuned for the timing on that as well as the content.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.